Hello, everyone.
Hi.
How y'all doing?
Good.
Y'all doing fine. How y'all doing?
No, I was going to say, we've got an Appalachian full house here going on today. I love this.
Except for me.
You're an honorary Appalachian.
Okay, thank
Got
you.
my shirt on today.
Oh, I love that shirt.
I do too.
Excellent. Well, welcome, everyone. I'm Betsy Coe, and I'm delighted to have Sandy Paddock co-hosting with me today to reveal what we discovered during April's month of rocking. And we are so excited that we have 3 of our 5 Rockies with us. We have Mags Golden, and we have Eric Stamper, and we have Jeremy Stone.
I like that.
I think I actually got all 3 right this time. So thanks to everyone who's in the live. It looks like we have John Tyner, Murray Maloney are in the chat watching live. Thanks for being with us, as well as 6 other people. And welcome to everybody who's watching after the fact. So this RAWK reveal is a little bit later than usual. We try not to have them go like into the spill over into the next month, but that's the way it was. So I am going to go to a presentation here. There we go. So first of all, if you've stumbled upon this YouTube video and you have no idea what we're talking about, RAWK is, well, first of all, WikiTree is a free worldwide tree where we strive to add accurately sourced profiles and connect them all together. So the main gist of this challenge is to add connections to our 5 people that we were rocking. Rocking stands for Random Acts of WikiTree Kindness. So we have other challenges on WikiTree where the people who are getting the special treatment by our WikiTree community are notable or famous genealogists, things like that. But we also wanted to celebrate and help the everyday WikiTreer. So that's what RAWK is all about. And people are nominated, and then we randomly select 5 every cycle. We have had 7. This is the 7th RAWK so far. So we had a team of 41 rockers in April. Here they all are. And I always find I have to redo this slide about 4 times because there's the people that sign up, and then as I'm going through all the fines, I'm thinking, you didn't sign up. Well, you need to be on the list. So I snuck a few people on, even within the last half hour. So thank you very much to our extremely dedicated team who spent the month helping people out. So our 5 rookies, Jeremy Stone, Eric Stamper, Mags Golden, who are all with us, as well as Ann Massey and Rick Sansusi. So our rocking by the numbers, our total increase in CC7 for the 5 rockies combined was 2,850.
Woo! That's a lot.
Yeah. So CC, again, for someone who might be wondering, what is a CC7? That stands for close connection within 7 degrees. And so you to yourself are 0, and then your parents or a child would be 1, and so on and so forth. The one thing about the way WikiTree looks at this, though, is we include relationships by marriage. And so this gives tremendous potential for expanding the CC7 when you factor in marriage relationships. So everybody this month, in April, started with a CC7 over 1,000, which, was a challenge, but we were up for it. And we were able to get Jeremy and Eric over the 2,000 mark. So they got, I'll just flip to the next slide. They got a special badge. You get special badges for each of the number levels. Sandy or Megs, do you know how many people have a 10,000 badge?
No, I meant to look at that. Last time I looked
bet
at
you
that
do.
was 2 months ago, and I do know that more people have been concentrating on their CC7 this year than when it first started. They're digging deep. They're making those connections.
Yeah. I bet that's the kind of thing that's under treetops.
It is.
Yeah.
And then also, I know a lot of people have brick walls that are preventing them from connecting in certain places. I had brick walls in the early 1800s. If I could break those, then I would be closer to that. So I think as people work and research those brick walls and break them,
yeah,
it increased.
Yeah. So, Megs, I'm sorry. We couldn't get you your 5K. I'm sorry. We tried.
Dang.
I know. But we did get you a 15% increase over what you've had already. And let's see, we got almost 500 more connections for Ann Massey and 205 for Rick. So, all right. So
Turn off the video because I'm lagging a bit.
I'm sorry, say again?
I just turned off the video because I'm lagging a bit.
Okay.
But I am not Azure.
Gotcha. Shall I turn it over to you now? Sandy and I are going to take turns presenting the finds. So
let me start with Jeremy. So Jeremy, I was thrilled to see you being rocked because your CC7 was on the lower side. So that just gave us tons of opportunity to go from there. But what we didn't realize is very quickly, your tree leaves the United States in a lot of areas. So we had to pull in a lot of help from other projects within WikiTree, but as an Appalachia Project member, we're not shy on digging in and trying to figure out things or ask for help. So I want to thank you also for being a member of our project. You're just a really great person to come in for your rock and help us out whenever we needed that help. We're like, Jeremy, please come in. Okay, so if we could go to the next slide, Betsy.
Sure. Okay.
And this is just your graphical. I love this. This is a Greg Clark.
Yes, 66 degrees out. Yep. So really, I mean, it was well filled in. A lot of the gaps, like I'm looking at this turquoise part, really got filled in.
And I think the turquoise and going into the yellow is also where we started branching out outside of the United States a bit and had a lot of help with that. And if we go to the next slide, this is very interesting. This is what we were talking about. So you have roots from Appalachia, the Midwest, and the Northwest. But I also know that Eric has done a lot of work on your tree during RAWK. And Eric, you probably know more of the areas outside of the United States that we were also working on. Because I think, Jeremy, you had what countries did your ancestors come from?
So my maternal side is very heavy Norwegian, and I think it was my great-great-grandfather immigrated directly from Norway. So they of course came across, like a lot of Norwegians, into Minnesota area and then moved, into the western part of the United States, into Washington and Oregon. So a lot of settlers that way on my maternal side. And then from my paternal side, there's a lot of English and I think some Scottish in there coming from that way. So quite a mixture.
as you go through. And Betsy, if we could go to the next screen, I want to show you some of these ancestors that came from the product of these pioneers coming to the United States. You probably know these people in your tree, or you might not. But this was the rockers, Aaron Robinson and John Powers. You know them from the Appalachia Project. They kept coming across profile after profile after profile of your ancestors that lived well over 100 years. So you've got really, really good genes here.
Good.
Really good genes. So I thought it was really interesting too that Evelyn lived to 101 with a very, very large, she lived to be 91, but she had a very large family, and all of her children lived in 80s and 90s, and one lived to 101. So those are really, really good genes, and that must be some good cooking that she had too as they were growing up. And remember this food conversation in just a moment. And then we didn't have a picture of cousin Mary, and she is not a direct relation. She's kind of married in, but she was born in Kentucky and died in Virginia at 102. But Donald is a special one. That face just makes me smile every time I see that picture. He raised a large family himself, and while he's raising his family, he is a jack of all trades and a mail carrier, operated construction business, and coached Little League, volunteered at the fire department, served as the sheriff, and served with the National Guard. So, and that smile was, did you know him at all?
I didn't really know him. I think I met him once when I was very, very young. But I did not. But I recently connected with his son, through Genealogy too, and have been talking with him. So that's been kind of neat.
That's really cool. I just love that face. And Aaron had found him and put it on your Padlet. Okay, if we could go to the next screen. So you're global. We were talking about global connections, and there were so many people that helped with your global connections. And I would say every single one of them, except for two, were in our Appalachia Project. So Eric Stamper and Patrick Stacy really went digging into your, I know, Eric, you dug into his more Nordic lines, and Patrick dug into your Quebec lines. And these are just pictures of where your ancestors lived in this town. I will tell you, for example, Lorraine, France, if you want to go investigate the notables and what life was like back in these areas, for Lorraine, France, Mary Guise, who is the mother of Mary Scots, was born in Lorraine, France. And this is Denmark on the left, France on the right, and then our next screen will show you the Sweden and Quebec. And I don't know why I just picked the best pictures that were on Wikipedia, and they're all churches. So I don't know how that happened, but there's your Swedish line and your Canadian line. Hey, Eric, did you get pretty far on his Nordic lines?
I think we went out through most of the generations for the CC7. And I actually handed a lot of that over to the Nordic Project. So there are quite a few people there that worked on, I don't do a whole lot of Norway myself, so I handed that off to Jeffrey and a couple others that are involved with those profiles. But I believe we connected to the tree as well through Norway. And I think maybe they could answer in the chat if they're here. I think some of the people in the Nordic group actually connected as well to him through Nordic countries.
Oh, that's really cool. So I
know that happened with me as well. So that was kind of fun and interesting.
And I know Kirsten was the one who did a lot of work on your Sweden line. So that was a shout out to her as well.
Kirsten did a lot of the Swedish work. I think Maria helped a little bit with some of that. Jeffrey did some of that. And I'm probably forgetting several other people who did as well. So I apologize for that.
But a
It
big
was a
shout out.
good group of people who were working on all different profiles.
A big shout out to the Nordic product.
Really steps up.
Yeah.
They've done that repeatedly during the RAWKs. Okay,
then on our next screen, we've got a couple things to show you. Now, I didn't warn Betsy in advance. So does everybody remember Monty McCoy? We rocked him in February. And just so I set up the story correctly, so Jeremy knows. And Jeremy, you probably remember this, or you might have saw this. We have in our Appalachia Project Discord, we'll have a separate little area where we can talk about the Rockies, because we tend to share tons of documents and tons of guesses and things like that. So as one of the Appalachia members, John DeHart, was working on Monty in February, because the McCoy line is very challenging. It's just very challenging. So as he was working Monty's line, and then Betsy, if you'll click your mouse once, and we found what work we were doing with Monty in February, John said, wait a second, I already did this. Am I rocking the right person? And I think, Eric, if you can remind me, this was a Samuel Lynn. We had to do a lot of work on that Lynn family for Monty. I mean, a lot of work. And the benefit was that connects also to you, Jeremy. And Betsy, if you'll click your mouse one more time.
Ta-da!
And there's Samuel Lynn. So these two connected. Now, don't hold me to this, but I believe, Jeremy, you're like 11 cousins, and Monty is probably 5 or 6 cousins. But we had to take a step back there and kind of realize, who are we rocking? Didn't we do this already? And this is also the case where we like to say, welcome to Appalachia, because it comes back around. Okay, and then just a few more things to show you. Jeremy, I hope you're okay with this next slide. I did take some liberties, and I'm so thrilled that both of you are here live on camera today, so we can talk about this a little bit. So this is a Rockies helping Rockies. So they both helped each other, just like we had Monty helping last time. So this is kind of funny, and I could not put this up here. So again, we have our own little separate Discord thread going on, and some people like to know what's going on, and some people avoid it. And if you notice, this is 9 o'clock in the morning on April 1st when RAWK started, and the Appalachians had already started at midnight. They were rocking and rolling, and I guess you clicked in there, Jerry, to see what was going on. But I do want to make sure to give a shout out to Eric. We talked about other people that were helping, and there is a brick wall, Hattie Dickerson, and in that thread, Eric had dumped a lot of documents and sources where we think that we can break that brick wall, and Jeremy's going to take it from here. But I just want to repeat what Jeremy had said, and said, but Eric, you, in my book, earned the prize of a can of possum stew and corn fat gravy. So if you want to PM me your address, I will get that sent to you. Because, and I would tell you, Eric is a master at brick walls, so he's really, really good. And Jeremy, I really appreciate the comment that you put. I've also learned not to discount the importance of step relations. So as Betsy mentioned at the beginning, we're not looking at just direct ancestors. We're looking at all different lines and married in. And it, as you said, it turns out that you're 12 cousins to your stepdad. Is he in Appalachia? Or is he?
I don't think he's Appalachian. I don't think he is. But yeah, that was kind of an interesting connection for me, anyways. And so when I texted my mom saying, "Hey, you were married to your 11th cousin," she was like, "What?" So, yeah, she's like, she goes, "So does that?" She was confused about the connection. I said, "Yeah." So that means that she's my stepsisters. I have 2 stepsisters, which are his daughters. I said, "So they're his daughter cousins. You're his wife cousin, and I'm his stepson cousin." So there we go.
So I guess I'll say, welcome to Genealogy.
Yeah.
But it's been a pleasure rocking you. I know that we had a lot of fun because you were at a low CC7. We had so many different ways to go, And I appreciate everybody who put up the Padlets as well to give us some information. So thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Wonderful. All right, Mags, are you there and on audio?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, and can you see? You can see what I'm projecting.
I actually deked into the house and got on a landline connection, so I'm good now.
There you are. Okay,
yes, I are.
Okay, if there's a WikiTree out there who doesn't know who Mags Golden is, I mean, I don't know what they've been doing, because Mags is legendary around the tree. He's been
or infamous. Could be infamous.
Depends on the day.
Yeah.
Has been on the tree for over 10 years. She's project leader, member of the DNA, Appalachia, Canada, and Southern Colonies projects, a WikiTree ambassador. She created the Templeton DNA One Name Study. I have the honor and privilege of being a co-host with her on the Saturday Roundup LiveCast. And I have to say, Megs, when I was new to WikiTree and the Roundup LiveCast was really sort of my first entry point to feeling like I was starting to understand the community. What you do every Saturday, where you give a little shout out and a hello to everybody, that always made me feel so special.
Betsy Co, Betsy Co.
So I just wanted you to know that.
Thank you.
And when it's thon time, Mags is with Appalachia Roots.
Biscuits.
We knew we had to say
it. I'm surprised it took 22 minutes.
I'm wearing really, we've been talking Appalachia the whole time.
I
know. So as previously mentioned, Mags was already starting out strong.
Wow.
Yeah, but we still did, we got, now this area down here. Oh, what is here?
Yeah.
That really is stubborn. And so is this area.
Right. Who dat? Who is keeping me from having a perfect blue, perfect gold there?
How dare they?
And there's another little issue really close. Where is that one? Just above that one.
Just above.
Yeah, right there. Keep going. Keep going.
Near the
right a bit. To the right. The other way. The other right.
Yeah,
that one.
Yeah.
That. Good question. Yeah.
Cool. All right.
All right. So there's still always work to be done, right?
Looks like I need to do some more DNA testing.
Do you have a kit? No.
I have about 100 kits.
I guess.
So the next few slides are just sort of getting us oriented with Mags's lines and ancestral geography. So Mags, please, if you want to hop in and expand on
this information is just from my Galding surname, and that's it. It is based purely on DNA. That it's Manchester, Western England, Welsh borderlands, and Somerset.
Mm-hmm.
It's Welsh. It's also a little genealogical research, because the Galdin surname, my spelling, ends up in Cardiff and in Somerset, in trying to think of the name of the town, Toland. There's lots of places in Toland, Galdin Woods, Galdin Manor. And the original surname, going back to the original owners of the land where Galdin Manor is, they actually called that area before 1066. They called that area Gavaldene, Gaveldene, which actually might be the root of my surname, but we have no way to prove that yet. So that's my Galding line.
Okay. So Megs, my family is down from Gloucestershire, South Gloucestershire. And so, Wales is very nearby, just across the river.
Yeah.
But when you say Welsh borderlands, you're
that whole area there.
North-south border.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
And the rest of it's all Irish.
Right.
And then Scots, yeah.
Yeah. So crossing the pond, you're your ancestors settled in a couple of places in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, Louisiana, Missouri, and Texas.
Yep.
So Cherokee, South Carolina, right?
No, York.
Oh, York. Okay. Okay. All right.
York and Sumter. Sumter. You have to Sumter. I had a roommate in college who came, and the very first day I met her, she came and yelled up at the windows, "Margaret, you want to go get some Donna?" I was like, "Oh my gosh, she's from Sumter."
Wow.
Go ahead. Love you,
Okay.
Celeste.
I decided sometimes these ancestor sites get so dense and so compact that I decided to show them paternal and maternal.
Okay.
So this is just to show your dad's side of things. And I noticed a fair number of the discoveries are maybe through marriages. So they're not necessarily surnames that are shown on this page, but
Oh, cool.
But look at all these DNA confirmations.
Yep.
So even back this far. So that's your third great grandparents. That
is so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Templetons and the Galdings have really been worked with DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And the Templetons, we can go back to actually technically 1347 in Island McGee, Ireland, because that is when the DNA says that we split off from our cousin in Ireland. So that's interesting. We haven't gotten the genealogy back that far, but we've gotten the DNA confirmation that far back.
Cool. Okay, and your mom's side, there were connections through definitely. As I tried to run the connections, every profile that I had a chance to look at, I ran the connections. So you definitely have some going through. Didn't you say that most of your connections usually go through your dad?
I think that there's been more genealogy work done on my mother's side of the family because both my grandmothers were genealogists and never wrote things down. My one grandmother never wrote a thing down, but she could tell you the nth degree of whatever. She's the one from Raymond. So there's been a lot of genealogical work done, and I've done quite a bit of work on my mitochondrial DNA as well.
Right. So just to look at a few of you, you had Sandy always helps with graciously setting up Padlets for us when we do a RAWK, which is where people collect interesting finds. So she'll be sure to share that link with you. Here are just a few of the highlights. I thought that this was very, very cool. Margaret Meredith was the RAWKer and was able to find James's application for the Confederate veteran pension.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and it's the profile picture on his profile. So it confirms his date of birth, his dates of service, and it gives his signature.
Nice.
Which I always like to see.
Nice.
So yeah, through your dad, and then
his first cousin.
Yeah.
Then his first cousin's wife. That's cool.
You also have some. Well, I guess this is this through marriage? Yeah, has a marriage in here, but through your mom's line, this lady Gladys lived to be 100 years old, and I just always cheer. And I saw a picture of her on Find a Grave.
Oh, cool.
I didn't feel right, using it, but if you go to the Find a Grave memorial, she looks like a real happy lady. So.
My Aunt Sybil, the connection there was just joyful. Always joyful, yes.
Okay, so Sybil would have been her niece.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yes, absolutely. And then back to another contribution from Margaret. So Stanley Little was, and there's actually quite a bit of detail on his profile, more than in his biography is well fleshed out.
Nice.
He served as a wagoner with the 18th Field Artillery Regiment in France during World War I. So I just really didn't realize that there were still horse-drawn wagons in combat at that time.
Yes.
He was killed in action in 1918, very, very sadly, and is buried in an American cemetery in France. So,
Nice.
yeah, Margaret had also found some things. I think it's in research notes on the profile about the fact that his mother had been invited, along with a group of other parents, to visit France, to visit his gravesite.
That's nice.
She had been approved for that, but it wasn't clear whether she actually made the trip. But so maybe that's something you could find out at some point.
And I should say, Margaret is excellent. She finds every military cool, interesting fact through RAWK every time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I noticed these. I mean, Megs, you'll see these profiles are really, really well done.
That's great, because my close family, my dad's service record, my grandfather's service record, and my other grandfather's service record all burned up in a fire. Yeah. So I don't have access. I have access to my grandfather's because I have his little packet that he had to carry with him everywhere. But yeah, that's cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So, all right. So we're on to
Eric. So before I start with Eric, I need to let everybody know that this was a joy for us to do Eric. I know Eric wasn't sure if you wanted to do RAWK because he does have a tricky, I don't know how many times it is your great-grandfather, right?
It's my great-grandfather.
Yeah, how many of them? There's 4 Henrys or 5 now? All born to the same man and woman. So it's a little tricky. And Eric was waiting on DNA to come through, the big Y to come through. So we kind of put a block on that one line just so we could wait. I think the DNA came through well after RAWK, but for those of us in the Appalachia group in the project, I have specifically been asked to say this, and I fully agree. Eric does so much for our project for research on things that we have no chance usually as casual researchers to fix, find, or break through. No chance at all. We will say, hey, I've got this problem. I've got this brick wall. And 30 minutes later, Eric has figured it out for us. And we are now don't have a brick wall there. We have a brick wall maybe 4 degrees later. I mean, it's that well done. So from the Appalachia project, we were thrilled when Eric decided to do RAWK because we wanted to thank you. And I will say what Erin from the Appalachia project mentioned, she considers these profiles that she created, and I know the rest of us do as well, as gifts to you as a thank you to everything that you've done for us. Nice. And we do like to claim him as ours, but I think the Nordic team, the Nordic project, likes to do the same because I know you do a tremendous amount of help there as well, and good friends in both projects. So you do help with the apps projects. You've also found a couple things and helped Ian out once or twice with some things. So that's pretty cool as well. Okay, here's the problem with Eric. Let me start off the bat. Now that's the good part. Let me tell you, Eric watched his tree like a hawk through RAWK. He knows everything that happened. He knows every profile, and he also was in his little thread as Jeremy was, helping us and showing us ways to go. And sometimes I think he was doing his own rocking
himself
as well. So I hope we have a few surprises here. If not, then maybe you'll get a couple chuckles out of it. So the reason why I want to say that is the next slide is an inside. I'm sorry, I went too ahead. So let me back up. So Eric, I know that we work mostly, I think, on your wife's line. Is that correct?
I would say it was actually more on my side. There was some on hers a couple generations, but there was a ton of work done in my Canadian ancestors in Quebec. Patrick Stacey did
Yes.
at least 100, maybe close to 200 profiles there. And then in Ireland, John Tyner and Chet Snow, they both did at least combined at least 150 profiles.
Whew.
And then for the Finnish and Swedish, Kirsten and Susan, they probably did at least 100 or more profiles between the two of them. And then the rest was kind of in the Virginia and North Carolina lines for myself and for my wife.
Well, let me back up real quickly too. So you mentioned Susan and you mentioned Kirsten, but I believe which one of them learned how to research Finland?
Kirsten is a Swedish researcher, and she actually went out of her way to learn how to research the Finnish documents so that she could work on that line, because there's very few people that know how to do that. Susan and myself are like the two people that I'm aware of on Discord and in the Nordic project that actually do Finnish profiles. And so she stepped up and learned how to do that, and even got a subscription to one of the services so she could look in there. So that was very much appreciated.
That's pretty cool, because I can tell you Finnish is extremely difficult. We, a few of us tried and not our wheelhouse, and we left. So I appreciate everybody that in the Nordic project that did that. And we filled in quite a bit. You've got some interesting little gaps there as well that you can research and see where they are at. Okay, if we go to the next, this, as we were talking, so Eric has a lot from the Appalachia, specifically kind of on the state line, Allegheny-ish County of North Carolina into Grayson, Virginia, right there. And then your branch, your grandfather's branch, came up to Maryland. So I want to point out too that we were thrilled as Maryland researchers when released the records. Was able to get a lot of the Maryland documents online. And I mentioned that because Eric has done a lot of work on his tree with that information that I'm sure helped us with RAWK to try and break through. Because if he hadn't added some of those from those records and confirmed, I'm not sure how successful we would have been on some of your lines. And then the Quebec and the Nordic countries as we come in. So your dad's side is more the Appalachian side, and then
my dad's side is completely the Appalachian side. So his father is the North Carolina and his mother is the Virginia, and it goes back hundreds of years until those counties were formed, and then they worked their way back towards the East Coast, mostly in Virginia. And they both moved to Maryland in around 1938-39 and met each other and got married here. And then on my mother's side, one half is all French Canadian. You can see the Frechette, her father. And then on her mother's side, it's half Irish and half Finnish. And then the Finnish branches off into Sweden at some points. So it is kind of nice in a way, especially when doing DNA and trying to triangulate things and all that, because I can completely separate some of the lines, except for when we get to my father's, where they just overlap and overlap and overlap. Many times, once you get back, 5, 6, 7 generations, you see the same people over and over again.
Multiple Henrys as we go through. Okay, so let's see then if we can surprise Eric a little bit with some finds. So on our next slide is an inside joke. I need to tell everybody that John DeHart in Appalachia Project found this gentleman. He never married. He is just barely outside your CC7, but it's a fun find because we all laughed and said, this is Eric with a beard. But part of the other reasons why this is an inside joke and we laugh is someone on, I believe, your Ancestry tree has this fabulous romantic book cover of two men fighting in the Civil War, and the men are just like, gorgeous and beautiful. And so Eric shared that with us, but I believe that ancestor that picture is attached to wasn't even alive during the Civil War, right?
Yeah. I have lots of ancestors that fought in the Civil War, but the one that has this picture attached to it was one of the few that didn't actually fight in the Civil War.
That's funny. I'm sorry.
I know. So that's our inside joke whenever somebody on a different site posts up a graphic or an AI thing, and it's like, this just isn't. So every once in a while, we will take Eric's picture of that book cover that's created for that non-Civil War hero and start writing book threads on our chat when we get bored. So now we have decided that we need to start with Eric with a beard and start doing that. And write his story for him. The gentleman never married, and he lived, quite a long time to marry. So there's a story there. We'll figure it out or make it up.
Sadly, I don't think mine would quite fill out that well, but
okay, so that's the fun part. So on the next slide, you might know this already, not sure that I say it different. I think I say Cadell. I think you say Coddle. Is that how you?
I say Caudil.
Yeah, I say Caudil too. Caudil.
But it probably was said Caudle a lot because it's spelled as Caudle in a lot of the records, and sometimes spelled as Candle. So it was probably said a whole bunch of different ways, and whoever was writing down in the census wrote it different every single time. I use Caudil myself. But
he did die in a coal mining accident in Twin Branch. A slab of coal kind of fell on him and crushed him, and he did die. And Aaron from Appalachia found this. The pictures are from the Library of Congress. If anybody is interested, definitely look and research Twin Branch, West Virginia coal mine. This area, these are coal houses down on the left where he would have lived. And the miners would have to pay to live there, of course, and they'd pay the company's store. And this is the town. But the town in the coal mine was owned by Henry Ford. And when they wanted to organize, this is after Harvey had already died, when they wanted to unionize and organize, Ford shut it all down and moved everybody out. And it became a ghost town, pretty much. And the houses just sat there unused and uninhabited. And then the next slide. Okay, this came from Patrick Stacy, and he did so much work on your Quebec. And I know when he found out that you were being rocked, he was thrilled. We were thrilled because a lot of us in our project do not research Quebec, but he did. And it was kind of interesting. This was from your Padlet, but it was interesting because a lot of your family that did move from Quebec that came to the United States, a lot of your family and also the Quebec that came to this particular area in New Hampshire worked in shoe factories and manufacturers. And most of them just said that they were a worker, but your great-great-grandfather was a fancy stitcher. So that stood out. Most everybody else was just...
He wasn't boring, man. He was fancy.
Yeah.
Got to be fancy stitcher.
And I keep thinking of, the wingtips and things like that. And what was he doing there? And this is from the Historical Society as well as the Library of Congress. This is pretty much what it would have looked like when they traveled there. Do you know why they left Quebec for New Hampshire?
The specific reasons, I don't know. I assumed it was basically large families and just a little bit of land and looking for, I know there were farmers in Canada, and so they're probably just looking for better opportunities. Same thing with the Finnish ancestors and the Irish ancestors. They're all farmers, more or less, and then they came over to the US and they all worked in factories. I don't know. I think I'd rather do the farming. But.
I would too. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and it also might be down to the fact that the older kids are the ones who inherit, and the younger kids don't have land to inherit or don't have something to inherit, so they move on.
They've got to find something. Yeah, good
Yeah,
point.
there were a lot of large families, and when you had 10 and 12 kids and you only had one farm to split up with everybody, it didn't
They
really
were
split
good
up
when they
right.
were young, when they could work the farm, but when they were old enough to inherit the farm,
Yeah,
get out,
Yeah.
get out.
they got cut
And my
off.
grandfather was born in Exeter, so that would be, they lived there, and I know my grandfather was born there.
Oh, that's great. Okay, let's go to the next slide. This is hopefully the surprise. So this comes again from John DeHart. This was an interesting one. This is Ransom Brooks, and he's your Appalachian, of course. And these are just some of the news clippings. There were so many, I ran out of time clipping them.
Officers find explosives guarding home of Ransom Brooks.
So he knew they were coming. He was leader of a gang, and he knew they were coming, and he decided they would not get to the house. They would try and do the explosives with the dynamite. A lot of funny stories here. When they did make it to his house, that they discovered a number of articles believed to have been stolen and a complete set of keys to the Allegheny jail.
And he wasn't going to get caught, and if he got caught, he won't stay.
No, and then another one was things that they had revolvers and he had shotgun, but he had also stolen from the courthouse a typewriter. So you can infer what you might with that. Maybe he was typing his parole documents, or I don't know, or forging or something like that. But he was part of a gang, and he was known as the Bull of Bullhead Mountain. He lived quite a long time for all this fun activities and felonious escapades that he had. But
we know where he started, right?
Yeah, he
started
did.
running rum somewhere.
That's exactly it. So the interesting part about that is if you go to the next page, good timing, Mag. So because he was trying to make money with the alcohol, he would stand at the state line dressed as a member of the clergy, stop passing cars to sell them something. And then as soon as they bought, he would change into a patrolman's uniform, chase the car down, and forcefully take that liquor back because he has to resell it, right? And take money. He would also take any belongings if they had jewelry, guns, things like that. He would do that as well.
Eric.
Not only so
you gotta do it. You might as well do it right.
Yeah. So
really,
he didn't want to give up the liquor. He wanted the money. So, Betsy, is it possible to go back one screen to all those newspaper clippings?
Yep.
So then that's where we see on the right that he was sentenced along with his other gangs because he had robbery, but impersonating a police officer as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they tried to make impersonating a member of clergy, but there was nothing on the law saying that you could or could not do that. The only thing on the law books was that you could not impersonate a police officer or a member of the law. So he did manage to get one of the charges taken off.
He must have had a good lawyer.
Like felonious escapades.
Yes, and I will give John DeHart the glory for that title. That was all his title. So we stumbled on that. There's a lot more to read. I did clip all the articles and put them on the profile that John is still PM of, and I got to thank John for that, because if he would have released that PM, I know you would have snagged it and you probably would have known all this. But is this a surprise for you?
Yes, this is pretty cool.
Okay.
It's not surprising that I have relatives that
That
this is
did
the
it.
story, because this seems pretty common, but like this person, yes, this is a new one.
Okay, that's good. So he was sentenced to 6 to 8 years in penitentiary. I know there's questions about where he was actually sent.
I'm hoping it was a place he didn't have keys to.
No, I know. And I believe I ran out of time for researching it, but I do believe he got sent completely out of state and he was sent to Atlanta. That's where the leads were going.
And changed his name to Houdini.
Yeah. So, you know, between the keys and the typewriter and taking back all of his alcohols, liquor, I have no idea what he was doing with all the jewelry and the guns and things like that he stole from people. But the smirk on his face says it all.
I was thinking that.
He's just looking like, so what? He got me. I'll be out and doing it again pretty soon. So that was the surprise. That was the I think that's pretty much the end of your presentation here. But I wanted to thank you again for everything that you have done for all of us in WikiTree. I know I talk about Appalachia a lot, but I will say that anytime we have a question or research or need help that just seems too difficult, Eric jumps in and takes it every time. And he's pretty funny in chat too, I might add. So thank you for letting us rock you.
Yes, I was glad that you said
Thank everybody who did. I appreciate it. 800 plus profiles. That was pretty amazing.
That is great.
So Sandy, I should have thought of this before. Do you want me to give you a rest? and
no,
I'll talk about
You're
yeah,
fine.
okay.
You're
All right. So moving on to Anne.
And Anne, I know her from the Team Virginia for the Thons, and she has so many relatives. I mean, she is a Virginian through and through. And I also know her working with the Southern Colonies Project. She does a lot for modern Virginia profiles, but very deep into the colonies and into the Virginia colony as well. And she's a connector and a sorcerer. And we filled in quite a bit of hers as well. I know the numbers kind of 1313 to 1805 doesn't seem like it would be a lot, but we really started filling in from her going out. And I think we did a pretty good job of getting, for example, the pink is pretty much, and then the green.
Completely filled in on the pink.
And then lots of holes in the yellow. Were filled in.
I really only see this one over here. Yeah.
I'm going to check out, guys. Continue and have fun.
Thank you, Max.
All right.
Thanks,
you, Max.
Okay, then as we move on, like I mentioned, she has very, 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 very deep roots in Virginia. That's mostly where I think a lot of people work. There are a few pockets of Kentucky and Ohio, but almost everything generation back was Virginia. And I love her pictures too of her ancestors. Okay, and as we talk about, this was a very interesting find as we talk about Anne. So Anne comes from the Massey line, and she comes from the Massey coal line. They actually own a coal mill, and they started a foundation, the Massey Family Foundation, in 1957. And this gentleman, William, is who started it. It's her ancestor that was born in West Virginia, and a very large donor to universities for scholarships, cultural programs, art programs. There's a cancer center that's in their name. And in the most recent history that we have for their donations is that, for example, the Boy Scouts, the Science Museum of Virginia, so you see a little bit more of a cultural, they donated scholarships for engineering to VCU and the Virginia Commonwealth University, and then also University of Virginia. and Marine Science Institute of Virginia and VMI, the Virginia Military Institute. I know that they have also reached out to donate we're talking large amounts of scholarships to West Virginia University and University of Michigan for engineering as well. And just so everybody kind of knows, as a side note, that you'll find the Virginia universities do a lot of engineering, but they also work with the students a lot for engineering with coal and going through. So that early on in 1957, when they started this foundation, they were very heavily trying to improve conditions and coal mines. And that would be William. Okay, this was an interesting find from Dave. And I hope that Anne researches this a little bit. This is something that I didn't really think about, I don't think ever. And I'd be curious to see if, Eric, you thought about this ever, because you kind of come from this same kind of areas around Virginia. But apparently this grant from King George III to her family, the land, and I don't have any of that in my family lines. Do you, Eric, from Virginia? I've never.
Not that I'm aware of off the top of my head. No.
I have never seen this before. So this was a really, really cool find from Dave, and definitely worth checking into. When Anne sees this, I hope she'll give us some information back from it after she looked at it. But so Dave did a lot of research, and I want to point this out, that a lot of times we're building profiles and we're sourcing and we're cleaning up existing profiles if they're, as we connect as well. Sometimes we pause if we find something really interesting and cool to go research it off of WikiTree and then come back and put that information on a profile. And I really appreciate Dave doing this, because this is kind of interesting to see that there's King Charles and then King George, both the third are, I'm not sure how they relate. But he says this, he believes this is her direct ancestor's house from that grant. And it was a landmark in Civil War. So I'm curious to see where this goes. But this would be Virginia.
Although it does say he was the last of his generation. So it sounds like he didn't have children. Am I reading that right?
That's what I'm assuming. I don't know if that meant just his personal line or his line from his parents. Did he have siblings? But I do know that a lot of us that have the Virginia, I'll just pick that one out since we're here, the Virginia properties and land, a lot of us had families that received very large tracts of land, and hardly any of it is in current family these days.
Yeah. Wow. I mean,
that was cool find if that's actually the house where a direct ancestor lived.
So cool. And
then the next slide is from Kathy Zipper. Sorry, Kathy. I always call you Kathy Z. I think she's in the chat. So, Kathy, if you have anything to add, feel free to do this. And this slide and the next one are kind of related, and they're interesting. So, Corporal Daniel Protzman was in the Maryland Flying Camp during the Revolutionary War. And I put what the flying camp is, but just think of the flying camp almost as a reserve of troops, not necessarily a reserve what we would think now for the Revolutionary War, but very, very, very close. And let me tell you why. So the reserves that we have now usually get a notice if they're going to be called up, and they have like 90 days that they need to pack and do everything. For the Revolutionary War, they didn't have 90 days. They had to be ready. They usually did travel with the organization that they were attached to, the military troop that they were attached to. So they were called a flying camp because at any point in time, that select group of troops could be moved to go handle a different battle, a different war, to clean up, to back up. Sometimes they were cooks and things like that involved in some of the background scenes, and sometimes they were fighters. So for those of you that are fans of military lore and history, the flying camp is a really cool thing that's never really talked about that much, but it is kind of the precursor to what we have as military reserve today. So thanks, Kathy. And then the next one, this poor gentleman. So he was actually a lieutenant, and we think it's the War of 1812. Still trying to confirm that. But he is listed in 1860 census for his occupation, nothing.
Oh,
So he was from Maryland, born and raised. His father was the slide that we just saw beforehand, and he moved to Ohio to live with his daughter. And in the 1860 census, he is 77, listed as doing nothing. Now, I need to point out a couple things. In that time frame in 1860, and if he had fought a war and he had moved from Maryland to Ohio, that's not like today with modern highways, and he is older, I think I would be doing nothing too. I really do. And I will point out one last thing about this. He died the next year. So
well, he might have been in ill health.
He just probably figured, I'm going to sit on the front porch rocking and doing nothing, as opposed to Eric's ancestor, who was playing dress up. So thanks, and that's again from Kathy Zipper. So thanks, Kathy, for that, and thanks to everybody for rocking. And it was fun to rock as well, because it was territory that I knew, so I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. Well, our fifth and final Rocky is Rick Sansusi. I'm not sure have we seen Rick in the chat.
No? I haven't.
Okay. All right. Well, so then Rick, you'll be watching this hopefully afterwards. So Rick's been on WikiTree since 2018. He's a member of several projects: United States, Texas, France, Filles du Roi, and Quebecois. He's also a data doctor, connector, and sorcerer, and he has a one-name study for his surname, Sansusi, and he is Sansusi 1. He's got one of those coveted profile IDs with the number 1. So we did fill in quite a bit. I will say I went through a fair number of the profiles that we added, and most of them were in the 4th to 6th degree connection range. There weren't a huge number of additions where there was a story to tell. It is more areas where or profiles where more could be done. But I have a few profiles to highlight. First of all, before I do that, Rick's paternal ancestry is almost exclusively from Quebec. So if you're not familiar with Canada, it's a province, and here it is in red with the flag. And yes, that is played out in his family tree here. And his maternal ancestry is from, well, Bavaria. Bavaria is what he told me. And here's Bavaria at the southeast portion of Germany. But there are also, as I looked at his ancestry stemming from his mother, we see Czech Republic and areas very close to Bavaria. And there was research, there was a group of about 6 or 7 rockers who just really dug in. You know, I was like going through and, oh, you again. So there's a very dedicated core. So Sandy gets credit for helping me work this out. Using WikiTree Plus, we were able to generate a list. Now, these are all the profiles that have been created within RIC's CC7 within 2024. And what I discovered as I was going through these is that they are organized chronologically by profile creation date. So if you're one of the people who is rocked, if you don't know how to do this already, I'm happy to give you the URL, and then you just sort of find that line, that boundary between March 31st and April 1st to see what was accomplished on your RAWK line. So although I mentioned Quebec and Bavaria, Rick also has connections to Ireland through his mother. Joanne Brown discovered this, and this was a relationship through marriage, but and I feel like Rick had adopted some of his profiles, but not all of them yet. So I feel that everyone who's RAWKed, it's definitely worth running the WikiTree Plus search or going through the CC7 changes with the WikiTree browser extension. Make sure you snap up those profiles, because there are a lot of orphans floating around right now. And this one, Sandy wanted to see if she could get all 5 Rockies to have an Appalachian connection, and she did it.
And I did. And I got to tell you, part of this, I got to give a little bit of credit to Kathy, because Kathy always gets me involved in the last week. She always tells me where somebody has a hole or what somebody needs, and calls me over to the RAWK line, as what I call it over in Discord. And Kathy and I was really great about cheering people on and saying, you know, we need this. Can we get this? And this was kind of a challenge. I easily, obviously, very easily, everybody was an Appalachian on this RAWK round. And Rick, I was like, oh, you know, I do like to tell everybody that chances are somebody in your line has, you know, traveled through Appalachia. I can find it almost probably 75% of the time. This one, I had to go deep. There are a lot of profiles. I can't even tell you how many profiles I had to create to get to this point. But technically, Rick has family from Appalachia. And I want to point out the reason why I say that the particular county, I think, is Shenango. New York was not an Appalachian county when she was born in 1776, because it wasn't a county yet. It was Tioga County, and Tioga County was fully established and is also an Appalachian county area that we consider. So technically, she was born in a county that was Appalachia, and lived and died there. So I just want to say we got all of them this time.
Yep, 5 for 5. Way to go. So that brings us to the end of the reveal. And a number of people have been, we've basically been doing a RAWK every other month for the last year and a third. So we're going to take a break for the summer and just regroup. And if you've participated at all in the RAWK event, any of the RAWK events, be prepared to hear from me. I'm going to just be probing for some questions about your experience and looking for ways that we can make it better, improve the experience. And if you are just really worried about not missing the next RAWK, just make sure you're following WikiTree events as one of your tags, and then you will get an alert about the G2G post when it appears about the next RAWK event. So
I just want to say real quick, I want to thank all of you that were RAWKed, Jeremy, Eric, Rick, and Max. This one in particular was really fun. I don't know if other WikiTreeers feel this way. We have talked about it a lot in a couple different channels, but this winter and spring has been rough for a lot of people, weather-wise, health-wise, family-wise, and this RAWK just came at a really good time, and we really enjoyed working on everybody and finding documents and finds that we just never thought we would find. So this one was a challenge, without a doubt. It was more challenging than the other ones, but it was really fun. And I just want to thank everybody for doing RAWK, for taking, putting your trees and your ancestors in our hands.
Yeah, yeah. And I made sure to wear my WikiTree Love t-shirt for this live cast because I feel like that's what this event is all about. It's about generosity of spirit towards the other community members, and it's just a beautiful display every time. All 7 times, it's been touching to see what people do for one another. So, thank you, everyone, and we will say goodbye for now.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.